Hey everybody, Kevin and Kyle again. And,
how you doing?
How to be a Texan. I'm doing fantastic. How you doing?
Doing good.
Yeah.
How y'all doing out there in internet land? Is that what we call it?
I gotta get on that internet. I'm late on everything.
I don't know.
Podcast land.
I don't call it anything.
Maybe you should.
I just call it friends listening amongst friends.
Well, maybe at some point this podcast will expand beyond just our circle of friends. It's going to go viral.
I don't know about that.
Maybe it will be a virus.
Four of my buddies listening right now, and they get a big chuckle out of it, and that's all I really care about.
Same here.
Okay, so
it's good to be here. It's good to have Andrew here in the control room with us.
Oh, I shot right past the chit-chat. Just going to jump right into it, I guess. Any more chit-chat?
You're intense, man.
Yeah.
No, I'm good. I got it all out of my system. Right. How you doing, Andrew?
Yep. All right. got
Yep. How you doing? Yep.
Yep. All right. Hey, today we're going to keep going on our Texas Legends theme. And I'm hodgepodging several things, and so I want to bring this to you. And it's a theory, Kevin, that I have that based on, it's not really a theory, it's history in action. And then I see it even today as I watch my daughter ride, and she rides competitively in this thing called barrel racing, and it's the craziest thing ever. You're riding a horse as fast as you can, and you're going in a cloverleaf pattern around 3 barrels. And it's you versus the clock. You, your horse versus the clock. And it's amazing to see the horsemanship skills with these barrel racers. So what you're going to think that's a long stretch to get to where I'm going. But let me tell you. So Texas Legends, there's a couple of them that I want to bring up today. One is the Comanche people, and 2 is the Texas Rangers. And I'm going to tie all the way back to Genghis Kahn. And you're going to think I'm a nut here.
That's serious. You didn't have your ADD medicine this morning, obviously.
Not at all. I am so all over the place. But as you know, I like to read, and I like to read history. And frankly, I like to read biographies about great historians. Mm-hmm. And a long time ago, I read this book around Genghis Kahn just because I thought, my gosh, that's a fascinating character that I know nothing about. So if you think about the life of Genghis Khan, he had the world's largest empire. Most people don't recognize this, but he created a common currency system. He created a common postal system across the vast empire that he had. But how did he get that empire? And that's the theory that I want to throw out to you, Kevin. And so the way Genghis Khan created such a vast empire was because of their horse warrior culture.
Well, you know he's famous because he's got a whole chain of restaurants named after him now. Genghis Grill? It is. You ever been to Genghis Grill?
Not why he's famous. Yeah.
No, that's not why he's famous, but that's how you know when you're legit. When you get
a restaurant,
when you get a fast food chain in America named after you, you're pretty much legit.
Restaurant. I've never
Genghis
gone there.
Grill.
I've never gone there.
You ought to. I think you got to kill the food yourself and then throw it on an open fire.
Horse meat? No.
Not a horse meat.
I'm not going. Hey, they used to eat that, and they used to eat Genghis Khan. You wouldn't believe it's fermented horse milk was their drink of choice.
What's wrong with those people?
I'm telling you, it was an acquired taste, by what I understand.
Fermented horse milk.
I'm not kidding.
That's bizarre.
So anyway, they were horse warriors, and so the first, and I don't know if it was necessarily the first cavalry people, but they created fear in their enemies by speed, and so they would take over, one province or one tribe after the other, and just continue to grow their empire based on this cavalry culture, and it was all speed based. And so it was men that had to be exceptional horsemen with the exceptional use of weapons on the back of a horse.
Did they ride bareback?
I don't know the answer to that. I remember there was the book that I read, and it was called Genghis Khan and the Making of the Modern World. Mm-hmm. And it attributed a lot of today's current cultural attributes back all the way to a barbarian. And because he created this currency, he created the first postal system, really the first Pony Express, and so he did some pretty amazing things. But what ties it to Texas is this horse warrior culture that Genghis Khan had.
Well, one quick thought. The reason I ask about the bareback thing is the Roman soldiers would actually ride their horses bareback because they felt that there was more of a connection with, I don't know.
Yeah.
And when they would go into battle, they didn't want to saddle in between them. They literally rode bareback. And there's something to it. I know Carolyn can ride bareback any day.
That's why she teaches her students.
She taught my girls or helped them ride bareback, and they just love it. For whatever reason, and I've never done it. I'm not.
It makes me so nervous.
I'm not good enough to do it. But
so Caroline teaches all these 8 and 10-year-olds how to ride now. She's 17 and has been riding since she was 4, and she teaches them bareback. And it makes me so nervous because I see these little girls, little boys out, and they're riding in my arena, and I'm like, it just frightens me to death because I'm like, you are going to fall off. You got no horn to hang on to, so you're going to fall off. But Caroline is dead set on it. She's like, Dad, it teaches them balance.
It is the best thing for balance you could possibly do.
Yeah, it teaches you really, like you said, how to connect, really connect with the horse and feel the movement of the horse and then come into that rhythm with the horse. Sounds crazy, but I believe it. And I've watched it, and I'm now seeing these pupils of hers really continue to progress.
The thing is, how old are her students?
They're 8, 9,
8,
10,
9.
12.
8, 9.
She's got a 14-year-old.
You fall off when you're 8. It's not that big of a deal. You fall off when you're 48, like us.
When you're 50.
It's a little more painful.
I don't bounce as well.
I got a few stories about falling off of horses that we can.
I bet you do. I've had a time or two. So bringing that random example of Genghis Khan and the horse warriors to present day, I want to talk about our 2 Texas legends that I want to bring up today. And one is the Comanche Indians, and 2 is the Texas Rangers. And I consider both of them horse warriors. And when you think about the Texas Rangers, and I'm not talking about the baseball team, I'm talking about the Cowboys that originated in Texas.
Yep.
And
still around today.
They're still around today.
They're basically the FBI of the state of Texas.
Right. All right.
Yep.
Do you know there was a Texas Ranger that got Bonnie and Clyde?
Is that right?
Yeah. My buddy Dr. Middlebrook just told me about that this morning.
They supposedly hung out here in Argyle for a while. Do you know that?
No. Bonnie and Clyde?
That building, yes. That building, I think it's now a real estate. The oldest building in Argyle. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
That used to be a bank. Bonnie and Clyde robbed that bank. They robbed that bank, and then they hung out. This is the legend. It's pretty much well confirmed that they robbed that bank. But the legend is then they hung out in, there's some old houses across the railroad tracks there on the other side. They camped out there for a while, and then they kind of moved on.
Huh.
So, yeah, there's a connection between Argyle and Bonnie and Clyde, for sure.
Well, there you go. Okay, well,
a little off topic.
I didn't mean to get in, because I don't know squat about Bonnie and Clyde. So
we'll cover that on
other
one
than
of these.
now, a Texas Ranger ended up getting them.
Yeah.
So the Texas Rangers ended up starting out to chase the Comanches, because back in the day, the Comanches roamed all through kind of the Texas and the Midwest. That
was their home.
They had a migratory pattern that they were nomadic, and they followed the buffalo, like many of the tribes did. And so they would roam all through, all the way down to South Texas, but they were a horse people. And so the amazing thing about
now, when did horses arrive here?
with the Spanish,
Right? So before that, they were just nomadic people.
they were just walking around,
But then when the Spanish brought the horses, they quickly mastered the horse.
They mastered it better than anybody.
Yeah.
In an amazing skills. So there's another book that I read called Empire of the Summer Moon, and I'd recommend this. This talks about the Comanche people, and specifically their horse skills. And so how they developed those were they got one or two or a small herd of horses and they just experimented around with it and failed, but then kept going. And then they ultimately mastered being their horsemanship skills, so much so that as a young man, as you became an 8 or 9-year-old, you were required, kind of your test, your passage of manhood had to be that you had to be a master horseman. And so much so that you would have to ride and go through these skills tests where, these rings would be set out and you had to do certain things of shoot your bow and arrow through rings. You had to be able to pick up, another 8 or 10-year-old on a full gallop. You had to be able to lean over and pick that person up and put it on horseback. You had to be able to shoot underneath the neck of a horse at a full gallop with your bow. I mean, can you imagine that? And this was bareback. These were the Comanche rode bareback.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they may have had a blanket, but it was generally bareback. But can you imagine riding at a full gallop and then shooting your bow under the neck, leaning over and shooting your bow under the neck of a horse opposite?
I do that. I do that all the time.
No. I would pay money to see that.
I would be eating dirt.
Yeah. So
real quick.
The interesting thing about the Comanche, they were fierce. And so during the late 1800s, we had actually all through the 1800s, we had all the frontier kind of eking out from east to west. And they were a fierce people to the fellow Indians because long before we got here, the American settlers came. There was always warring between the tribes, across Texas and the Midwest. And the Comanches became a dominant tribe once they became these horse warriors. When they developed these skills of the ability to, and think about a horse can go 45 miles an hour. A man can run less than half that at best. At a sprint and for very, very short distances, but a horse can go 45 miles an hour for a very long time. And so at that speed and with the precision of the bow and arrows that the Comanches had at that time, they were a dominant, ferocious force that could overtake any competing tribe that was more agrarian, because there were a lot of tribes in Texas that were growing things, and that's how they were surviving, and they didn't necessarily follow the buffalo herd.
I have a distant cousin that was a Comanche. Chief.
I wished we had any in me, and you get.
You ever heard of a guy named Quanah Parker?
Oh my gosh, yes! I read a book about the Parkers.
Yeah.
That's a fascinating story.
I mentioned Granny Holder on an episode or two ago.
Yeah.
She's from the Parker kind of family tree. So Cynthia Ann Parker was related to my grandmother.
It's actually a pretty tragic story because she was kidnapped.
She was kidnapped, yeah. She was.
There were some bad stories about that time around women and young girls in particular that were kidnapped by whether it was the Comanche or the Kiowa or the Apaches, and generally integrated into the tribe.
Yep.
And against their will. So thus came an opposing force. So when you have a force, like the Comanches or the Apaches, and the Apaches came on after the Comanches, and they developed their horsemanship skills, but not nearly to the level that the Comanches did. The Comanches demanded that super high level of perfection as a horseman of their young, women and men. And they were amazing, horse people no matter what. The Apaches really saw the success of the Comanches, and then they continued to build up their horse skills. But
now, where were the Apaches at here in Texas?
They were further west. I mean, they integrated, but not great. They were further west, all through New Mexico and Colorado. They tended to be on the western edge of where the Comanche territory typically was. So they were still.
Now, what about DFW here, where we're at now? Was that Comanche territory?
Oh, no, we had Comanches through here, But
there was the Wichita Indians throughout here too.
Well, we
right?
had a bunch of tribes.
Mm-hmm.
You had a bunch of, but wherever the Comanches nomadically went to, they always dominated.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody that was around, they got out of the way quick, or they were dead.
Gotcha.
Because that's how dominant they were. And that was before Quanah. That was before he kind of started. That's when the frontier started kicking in. So then the next group of horse warriors rose to kind of meet the Comanches where they were, and nobody could. Well, the problem is they sent the US Calvary in, and so we had the US Calvary. This was
the bunch of Yankees down here trying to do stuff in
right,
Texas.
and
that was destined for failure.
Well, I don't know about that, but regardless, their tactics were poor.
Yeah,
because they had very traditional approaches of let's ride in columns and we'll find the enemy eventually, and we'll send an Indian scout out to try to find them, and they failed. They had some success, but generally they didn't have the kind of the nimbleness that the Comanches did, because they would see a big force coming and they'd take off. I mean, they were very crafty that way. So up came a group of real scrappy, not necessarily thought of all that great, but it was some younger cowboys that were hired basically as bounty hunters out of Austin. And the governor at the time, he didn't have much money, but he hired just some ragtag 20-year-olds and said, look, I'll pay you if you can do some protection of this very ragtag frontier, and then try your best to go and recover some of these kidnapped women.
So they had identified an issue on the frontier.
Yes.
And that women were being kidnapped.
Yes.
Along the lines of the Cynthia Ann Parker story.
Right. That's right.
So that was a major problem.
Yeah, and so the
governor of Texas said, these guys from the US Calvary aren't cutting it.
They're not.
Let's send some of our boys out and see what we can do.
That's right.
Is that basically what it was?
That's right. And this was a time when the Colt revolver came out too, and so there was great success with this 6-shooter, and it was even in its infancy. And this is in the mid to late 1800s, and when the Colt revolver came in, and so you had these kind of young, scrappy men that were hired by the governor of Texas in this kind of ragtag group, and you had literally a line going from kind of the northeast Texas up around like Jefferson, Texas, through down to like San Antonio. So it was a line.
You ever been to Jefferson?
I have.
Oh, I love that place.
Yeah, I was just telling a buddy of mine about that.
We stayed at I think it's called is it the Captain? No, it's not the Captain's house, is it? What's the famous hotel there?
The Taunted?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I just told the story the other day.
Kinder and I did a weekend trip out there the haunted hotel.
Well, we did too. Amy and I did too, even before Caroline came.
Yeah.
I mean, this was like a year after we got married. We went out there and spent a weekend at the Jefferson Hotel.
I got to find the name of that place.
So they said, hey, if you guys choose to stay in this room, remember, the train doesn't go through Jefferson. Never has. They wanted it. They kind of like vied for it, just like Dallas is vying for Amazon right now. But they vied for it and they didn't get it. It went. They chose a different path, and it crushed them. So the train never went through there. But they said, if you stay in this room, somewhere around 2:00 in the morning, you might hear a train come through.
They planted that in your mind.
Maybe
they planted that.
I'm a pretty pliable mind. So whatever happens. So anyway, they put Amy and I sleep in this bed. It's big as a house, and because we just like our space, and don't touch me at night. So that kind of a thing. But anyways, they put us in this bed that was like a twin bed, and it had this, we just kind of were on top of each other in this, very terrible bed.
Oh my gosh, I know Amy.
Yeah,
that was miserable for her.
It didn't work, but somehow she was asleep. I don't know how. I don't know how she was asleep.
She was asleep, and you were wide-eyed, waiting for the ghost to show up.
Well, no. So I thought I was wide-eyed, but at 2:00 in the morning on that night, I'm telling you, I heard it, and it was the loudest thing I've ever heard in my life. It was a train sound that was coming. It felt like it was coming right next door.
Are you sure there's not just a train track out there?
I'm telling you. You look it up about how many train sounds at 2 a.m.
I think there's a train that goes through there.
No, I woke Amy up. I woke her up. I'm like, hey, did you
She didn't hear a thing, did she?
Oh, no. And she's a light sleeper. She would have woken up. I'm telling you, there was something not right. And then they put us in another room the next night, and I didn't have that same kind of. They're like, "Oh, that this apparition will appear in the corner or whatever," and that didn't.
You didn't hear the train at 2 a.m. though.
No.
No.
Nor did I see this little apparition in the corner of this other room.
What was that supposed to be?
It was supposed to be some little haunted person or something.
Casper the Friendly Ghost or something.
I didn't see that. I didn't see that one.
Jefferson the Friendly Ghost.
Well. So anyway, you had this line of the frontier back then, and so you had this series of forts and missions that went up and down this line, and really people stayed behind that line to the east, of the frontier. And so the governor hired these ragtag guys, and they had these Colt revolvers, and they were just happened to be good horsemen, and they hunted in these kind of scrappy ways, kind of almost nomadic ways, where they would just go and they would hunt for groups of Indians that were bad in their perception or who had been kidnappers. And they would go and engage them on a full gallop, as opposed to these traditional cavalry, you position your group.
So what percentage do you think of Indians were really bad versus just kind of they had a bad rap going on?
Oh, no, I don't think they were bad. I think that was their lifestyle. I think there were certainly bad chiefs that had, that were power hungry and bloodthirsty. I know that was certainly the case. But you look at the lifestyle of these people, and they were absolutely great family members. They loved their family. They had, and so their value system was very good and legitimate. But they had a nomadic lifestyle that was very simplistic. Like I'm just, I need to be able to feed my family and keep them warm and safe and predator free, and so it was much more simplistic and survival oriented.
Yeah.
And that was it. But they had a great sense of community. They had a great faith system of beliefs. It was certainly different than what we have. But no, these were not bad people. It was just a very fundamentally different lifestyle than what the American frontier and the hopes and dreams of the Americans moving out that way had, because we wanted, at that time, we wanted to move out. We saw the opportunity for all this amazing land, and we wanted to, raise cattle and farm and, grow cotton and whatever, we wanted all that land, and we got it eventually, but it wasn't easy. And so you had to create a group of horse warriors to take on a group of horse warriors, and that's exactly what the Texas Rangers became. Because it was an ultimate failure for the US Calvary to come in because they could not have, and they ended up hiring the Texas Rangers to teach them those crafty skills of horsemanship, the ability to ride into and engage, with Colts, and ultimately repeating rifles. And so that's how the Texas Rangers formed, and then really kind of grew to their own legend of what they are today, because they were survivors too. Now these, some of the young Texas Rangers, these were, slippery characters. They'd get, drunk and all this other stuff. So these were great. Some of them were great, but some of them weren't great. But they learned how to fight as horse warriors, and they ended up making a huge impact on the frontier, which allowed much bigger forces behind it, security police forces behind it in the big cities. And then that formed up kind of a safe haven so that the Indian raids going to kidnap into the Wacos and places like that were less and less likely to happen because you had bigger police forces that could safeguard that. And then the Comanches in particular, they knew that the Texas Rangers would go and literally pursue and hunt them down. And that's what they ended up doing.
So what's the common thread across all this? You started with Genghis Kahn, and then we went to Comanches and Apaches and Texas Rangers, and then we weaved in a few stories about your daughter and my daughter along the way. I mean, what's the common thread across all this stuff?
To me, it's an appreciation for amazing horsemanship skills. That's the first and foremost thing. It's the connection between human and horse that truly is an amazing thing that we've developed over time. And now I see that with Caroline, because now, back in the day when she was young and starting out, I was the fearful dad, and I'd be like, oh, please just don't fall and break your neck. But now, we're going to a 2-day rodeo this weekend, and her horsemanship skills are so complete that she has such incredible confidence at high speeds. And so I just have that appreciation that now, instead of me being fearful for her, I look and I'm like, hey, honey, you need to cut a half second off that, because, I think you and Scout can cut that corner a little tighter.
Well, and the thing about Caroline is her skills are not forced, right? She is a natural, and she has always taken it at her own pace.
That's right.
When she was younger, she had some fear, but it was probably well placed at the time. You know what I mean? She didn't like to go fast when I remember when she would not go fast to save her life.
That's right.
But now looking back on it, she was probably the wiser than you and I, who were out there saying,
giddy up,
go a little bit faster.
That's right. That's right.
You know what I mean? She knew what she was doing. She knows her horse, and
that's right. And she's no daredevil, and I agree. I think now, watching the past however many years of that, it's been a fun evolution to see. Mm-hmm. And now
she has a gift for sure.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I go out and I see these young men and these young women doing rodeos every weekend, and again, I just have that appreciation for that bond between kind of man and horse. It is really a beautiful thing. I know you get into the psychology of it, and I've seen people that don't have great public speaking skills, or they don't have great confidence in front of crowds, but then you put them on a horseback, and they have that ability to make that connection with this 1,100 pound, very powerful animal. And they have command over that animal, because they are master over that animal, and that animal has succumbed and given that to the rider. It is a thing that gives a person such self-confidence that I just think it's invaluable. So I have an appreciation for that. So that bottom line is I love reading about, even though, yes, Genghis Khan and his people were considered barbarians. They were phenomenal horse people. Then you move all the way to the Comanches, and they were the epitome of horse warriors. And then you have the necessity of us having to counter horse warrior with horse warrior, and then up comes the Texas Rangers, and then they still have their amazing legend even through today. Mm-hmm. So,
well, and all the great militaries throughout history were horse people,
right?
Other than in modern times, or we have tanks or whatever. But,
that's right.
Before that, it was always whether it's the Roman Empire or
Well, the Civil War.
Anything.
I've read a ton of books on and around the Civil War, and we. Whatever the battle was, you always had the X factor of the cavalry, because at that time we didn't have tanks or whatever. You had cavalry, and you'd have Pickett come in or something with his cavalry on the left flank, and the whole thing would, go haywire because the cavalry came out of nowhere. They flanked us. And so, you're right. It's always the cavalry has always been that game changers. So now I don't know where that is in the current drone
Do they
world.
Still have a cavalry? Do we still have a cavalry?
No, cavalry of drones.
I don't know.
I don't think so.
Let me do a Google here.
You would think so, that it would be.
This is where we need to have Alexa on the program, so we could just say, "Hey Alexa, do we have a cavalry?"
She wouldn't know. Siri would know.
She would know.
No, Siri would know.
No, Siri's not doing it for me, man.
I think we might have more.
Siri's got a bad attitude.
Kind of military horse that are only kind of for show. Just like you almost see the police that are around the streets of Houston or Dallas, and they're on horseback, and you're like, what are you really going to do? Because that horse has got shoes
I tell you
on.
What. I tell you what. There's a role for that during the. Because I thought the same. I was like, well, what are these guys on horseback? Whatever. During the last election cycle. Mm-hmm. I probably told you this story, but Aaron and I went and spent a day. there were multiple presidential candidates in town during one day. And I took Aaron out of school that day because he was interested in politics.
Yeah.
Went and saw Marco Rubio in Dallas, and we went to a coffee shop along the way.
Yeah.
Went to Fort Worth and saw Trump. There were mounted police at the Trump rally.
Oh.
And they were there for a reason. Because it was everything you hear about the Trump rallies on TV, that's what it was.
Oh.
There were protesters. It was a 180-degree opposite of what we saw at the Rubio rally, which was very calm, professionals. This was just like, and there were people on horseback, and like you were like, okay.
Oh, no.
I mean, they were there, and you were not going to mess with them. And just the fact that they were on a horse made them head and they were above the crowd.
Right.
And they were in control, man.
Oh, well, those horses are amazing because even yesterday I was out shooting a bull with my neighbors, and we were feeding
your neighbors that have the gigantic horses.
They got rid of one of them.
Oh, they did.
Yeah. But anyway, we were feeding my 2 mama cows, and out of nowhere, those horses came up. All 4 of my horses came up, and they're such bullies when there's food around. And those cows are gigantic. They're like rhinos. They're so fat. But the 4 horses came up, and they just ran those cows off like it was nothing. And I'm talking like my 2 mama cows are like elephants. They're so fat.
Yeah.
And, of course, the 2 bull calves were gone, but the mama cows were. I'm like, you need to stand your ground, Alice and Vera. But then here comes Scout,
they're not.
Harper.
A horse is going to move a cow any day. That's why. That's what they're. Our horses all come from a lineage of horses that were bred to do that.
Yeah. Well,
the Cowboys back in the day, they herded the cattle up the. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I can see. So if you're mounted on a horse and you've got a crowd in front of you, I could run right through that crowd, and the horse is going to be fine. So that would cause great mayhem if I'm on a horse and I have a crowd in front. Now, anyway, because I'll bet on the horse every time.
Apparently, we do still have a Calvary.
Yeah,
I don't know what they do. Maybe they're just symbolic or for show or.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Now, I was walking to a restaurant. I was in the Woodlands, Texas the other day, and I was walking from the hotel to the restaurant, and there was a female police officer on a mounted horse just walking around.
Yeah.
It was at the mall. There was no danger there.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, what's up? It's just like, I'm just walking around patrolling on my horse.
Maybe that's why there's no danger there, because she's there on her horse.
She's a fairly nice demographic.
You're not going to be messing with her.
Well, I didn't, and I really want to talk to her because she didn't. Nor did she want to talk to me. I was just going to get my tacos. That's pretty much it.
She's like, dude, leave me alone.
I didn't. I'm
just on the clock right now. I'm working. Just leave me alone.
I was playing Pokemon Go. I was walking around and getting my tacos, and all of a sudden here comes this lady on a giant horse. I'm like, oh, all right.
Have you ever ridden your horses in a parade?
Caroline has. Oh, I did once with her.
Yeah.
I was on Elvis and she was on Scout, and we rode in one of these Fort Worth parades.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
Nice. No, it's nice.
I'd love to do that. We've never done it, but
I just don't like all the regalia you have to put on. You have to put all the tassels and all the cowboy gear and all that stuff. And
well, that's right up Caroline's alley.
Oh, it's right up hers, and decorate the horse, all the little paint and the glitter and all that. But I don't really look good in that with the tassels coming off and the rhinestone boots.
You're a rhinestone cowboy.
No, I'm not. At some point, we'll have to talk about what I consider the beautiful people. That's coming up. And these are the pointy-toed steel boots and the full-length fur coats on men I'm talking about. Those are the beautiful people. We've got those in Texas. I'll tell you that right now.
I think I may have seen some of the Von Erichs wearing that.
Oh, the full-length fur coats.
I don't know. I'm just making that up.
I don't know either.
It's a throwback to one of our previous episodes.
Yeah, that's a good one. Hey, so I appreciate y'all listening to us about the Horse Warriors. In my mind, that is a couple of legendary groups of the Comanche Indians and the Texas Rangers. So you'll hear us refer back to the Texas Rangers from time to time because they've had a long and proud history, and certainly proud of that group here in Texas. So any final thoughts, Kevin?
No, this was a good one. I enjoyed the Indian horse talk.
Yeah.
It's always good stuff. Very Texan.
Well,
it's a very Texas thing to talk about.
Anytime I just get to kind of free flow through random thoughts of Genghis Khan all the way to the Texas Ranger, I love theories like that.
Connected a few dots there.
I'm trying. Okay, well, hey, thank you all for listening to this episode, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Make sure to find us, like us, subscribe to us, and write a review.
Yeah, that's right. We're here.
Thanks.
All right, take care.
Goodbye.